Awesome, everybody. Well, I want to be the first to welcome you to our digital accessibility webinar today. Um, we are really excited to have, I want to make sure we're using a different screen sharing thing here. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment just to introduce us. We'll go through an agenda and then we'll get started right into that content. My name is Sharon Green. I am one of our solutions engineers here at Finalsite. Accessibility is near and dear to my heart. Before making the jump to ed tech about 4.5 years ago, I spent the majority of my career in special education. I was in education for 25 years. I've done every job from learning specialist, department chair, special ed administrator. So I love that I'm now able to take this into the digital accessibility world. Joined with me today is Sue Kunz, and I'm going to let Sue and then Bridget introduce themselves and give you a little bit of their background. Sue, handing you the baton.
Thank you, Sharon. Hello, everybody. My name is Sue Kunz. I have been working with districts across the country for just over 20 years now, all within ed tech space. Prior to that, I worked with third grade students as a teacher and then made the jump over to the ed tech world. So happy to be with you all today and looking forward to hearing more about our digital accessibility webinar. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bridget.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Hello, everybody. I'm Bridget Daly. I'm the Digital Accessibility Manager at the Colorado Department of Education, or CDE. I've been doing digital accessibility work for, I think, well over a decade. I've worked both in the private and public sectors, doing startup work, doing accessibility there. I've been with CDE for about 3 or 4 years. The last 2 years have been dedicated to building our digital accessibility program. So super excited to talk to you all about it today and on my experience. Back to you, Sharon.
Awesome. Thank you. So Colorado Department of Education is one of our favorite partners, particularly with regard to accessibility. They are really leading the way for Colorado and everything that they're doing. For those of you who might not be aware, Coloradans have been talking about this for about 3 or 4 years, right, Bridget? Because there was a state mandate. So they had to be compliant back this past July. So they are really your go-to folks when it comes to how do we navigate all of this. All right, we are going to just take a quick look at the agenda. We're going to talk about that ADA Title 2 and 3 and really just what you need to know. Then Bridget's going to talk to us about her perspectives from the field. I'll talk through our built-in accessibility tools and how we partner with you. And then Sue is going to wrap us up with managing a complaint if you were to get one. And we have a lot of resources as well to share. Let's go ahead and talk through this Title 2 and 3. So this has to do with web accessibility and really what this means. So from an accessibility standpoint, what we're really trying to do is level the playing field so that when someone comes to your website, if they have any sort of disability, so let's say they are visually impaired, we want them to be able to have the same experience with your website that someone who does not have that disability needs. So really, again, leveling that playing field and make sure that we have equal access, right? That people are not excluded because of something that they might need. Quite honestly, a lot of people benefit from accessible experiences. So if we think about things like the dips in the sidewalk, right? That was originally intended for people in wheelchairs, but those of you who have ever pushed a stroller or a grocery cart, for example, right? Those are good for everybody. And so it's not just for those people with those permanent disabilities. It really does benefit everybody in a community. Even if, for example, I forgot my glasses and I need the screen to be larger, or I need, the cursor to be larger, those types of things. When you're talking with your folks about accessibility and what does it mean and how are we getting people on board, this is a great way to sort of frame that conversation with regard to it's not just because now it's the law. If we reframe that to be this should be what we're doing because it's the right thing to do, because we want to make sure that all of those people, have the same experience. This is a really great talk track for you. Let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty with regard to what you need to know. So Title 2 and 3 are the parts of the law. Title 2 has to do with those public institutions. So your schools, your governments, things like that. Within Title 2, they have identified that this WCAG, right, standard is that technical standard that we're looking for all digital content. Title 3 does not specify WCAG 2.1 AA. However, it really is looked to as the standard. So for things like private schools, you might think, oh, the law is not going to apply to me. You are actually need to be compliant under that Title 3. Happy to talk more about that with you. If you have questions on that, please feel free to reach out to us. A couple of things that you also should know is that there are different deadlines. So depending on your community population, if it's over 50,000, then your deadline for compliance is April 24th of this year. If you are under that 50,000 population, your deadline for compliance will be next April. So what is WCAG? First, let's talk about that acronym, because we throw a lot of acronyms around, and I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page with what that is. So that stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And it really, again, is that sort of global standard for how do we make web content accessible. Things like if we think about a screen reader, right, making sure that we can navigate by a keyboard. Anybody who has any type of, visual, hearing, or cognitive disability. And we want to make sure that that content is accessible on mobile devices as well. Another acronym that has been thrown around that I've seen a lot of is this A11Y. That's the acronym for accessibility. So if you see digital A11Y, it simply means digital accessibility. That came about because there's 11 letters between the A and the Y. So in case you're wondering where that came from. Let's talk about some of those content exceptions. For specific information, I have a little link up here for you to go to the ADA page. But there are some exceptions to content that needs to be accessible on your site. The first is archived web content. So if you have something from, 2017 that you don't really need anymore, my recommendation first would be to get rid of it, but know that in certain situations, that can be a content exception. Things like pre-existing, conventional electronic documents, things that are, posted by a third party, things that are password protected if they're individualized documents. Probably one of the things that we get the most questions about is regarding social media posts. So pre-existing ones are not required to be fixed. However, there is a nuance to that. So if a post if it's actively still used to provide information, or if it's linked from current pages, or if folks are required to register, apply, or access services, then it probably needs to be accessible. Again, a lot more detailed information on that ADA page. But this gives you a good starting point with regard to, okay, what are the things that maybe we need to take off our site, or we need to, it's archived so we don't have to worry about it. Having worked in schools for a long time, I know how challenging change management can be. And I've heard from a lot of clients, one of the most popular questions is, how do we get other folks on board who aren't seeing, quite honestly, the importance of it, because this is not the world that they live in day to day. So for your webmasters who are, doing this job as a stipend on top of, their regular job, how do we get them on board? These are some great examples of how we can match that compliance with the compassion. Again, if we're thinking about this and reframing our lens from we have to do this because now it's the law to we want to do this because it's the right thing to do, and we want to be inclusive in our community. And if we think about prospective parents, right, who are coming to your site, making sure that they also feel included. So a mother with low vision, right, missed the updated bus schedule because it was posted as a non-readable scanned PDF. Deaf parents didn't see their child's failing grades because the school's explainer video didn't have any captions. Even things like, I consider language to also be a way to make sure that we're including people. So a family who only speaks Spanish, submitted that form late because the content was in English only and non-digital. A father who was blind, unable to participate in that PTA decision, right? Because the meeting minutes and forms weren't sent in a manner that he could, access them. Parents meeting an IEP deadline, right? Because the notification was posted on a calendar, screen readers can't access. So I'm giving you these as just those examples when you are faced with, I don't have time to do this, I don't know why I have to do this, it's not going to matter, right? Having it be that personal connection, I think will really help in terms of your change management. I'm going to turn it now to Bridget, who is going to give us some perspectives from her position and everything that she manages on a day-to-day basis, and how she got other people involved as well. Bridget, I'm going to be your Vanna here. You just let me.
Thank you so much, Big Sharon. All right. Hello, everyone. If you heard 2026 federal accessibility law and immediately thought, cool, I'll just switch careers, just stick with me. As a little preamble to the presentation, and before I get into the slides, CDE has been working officially on digital accessibility since 2021. So I'm here to offer you encouragement. I'm here to offer commiseration, because I've been exactly where you all are, and I know how tough it is. Accessibility can feel so overwhelming. So let's all take a collective deep breath and lower our blood pressure just a little. Because at the end of the day, making something a little bit more accessible is going to be better than nothing. So for a little pep talk, the sky is not falling. Progress over perfection. So what can you do now? Can you add alt text? Can you make sure all of your links are descriptive? It's okay. You're not going to be perfect by the deadline, probably far from it. And I would even go as far to say as nothing is ever 100% accessible. So definitely keep those in mind. So progress over perfection. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We don't have to do everything all at once. And to quote Arthur Ashe, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. be willing to show some sort of good faith effort that you're working towards removing barriers, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to see. We want to make sure that all of the digital assets are inclusive to everyone. And then habit stack. So definitely start with one thing and then continue building those accessibility skills. And as Sharon mentioned earlier, accessibility is nuanced. So there is a lot of gray area, and it's really, really easy to get overwhelmed and to get into the weeds on things. So really just do the best you can with the knowledge and the skills that you have now, and then keep learning, keep upskilling, right? When you know better, do better. Next slide, please. All right, so if I were to do this all over again, these are the things I would start with. First and foremost, treat accessibility like any other core operation. Accessibility compliance isn't a project that ends. It's something that you'll always be working on, right? Accessibility should be treated the same way organizations treat cybersecurity and privacy, as a core operational risk function that requires governance, processes, and accountability. Additionally, accessibility isn't a project with an end date. So 2026, 2027, they'll roll around, and these are all the deadlines to get your foundation in place, but the deadline isn't the finish line, right? Accessibility needs to be a part of how you operate. And then next, know and understand accessibility law. So you can't comply with a law you don't understand. Get to know this law inside and out. Meet with your legal representatives, meet with colleagues to discuss this, because in my experience, you'll have to reference the law a lot, and not only for yourself, but for others. And this law is what informs our work. So really try to get comfortable with it. And then know, even when you're comfortable with it, you'll always have more questions or a new scenario will pop up. And then lastly, prioritize digital content. So if you have new content, ensure that it's accessible. And if you have old content, tackle high traffic content first. So digital content management excuse me, can feel so overwhelming. So start by prioritizing your documents and web pages. As mentioned earlier, what documents can be considered exempt? So what are your archive documents? What are your pre-conventional electronic documents and social media posts, right? And then make a plan, and we'll discuss this a little bit later. But tackle high traffic pages and documents first, and then work on the rest. And then create accessible content from the beginning. And I know that's all of this is easier said than done, but at the end of the day, it's going to be faster and cheaper and less stressful for everyone if you can create that accessible content from the beginning. And then I also did want to add the caveat, it's equally important that you actively create and maintain the accessibility of your website and content. So Final Site provides powerful tools, but true accessibility requires thoughtful human oversight and ongoing care. So just make sure that, you actively create and maintain. Next slide, please. All right, and we'll talk about PDFs because I know they're a beast. And I know I can't see hands or anything, but if we can do reactions on here, I'm not sure. But raise your hand, show me a reaction if you've ever opened Adobe Acrobat's tag panel and immediately closed it, because I have been there, so same. And then first before I get to this slide, I want to ground us in a story about our experience at CDE. So when we first looked at documents on our public site, we had over 22,000 documents. And that number alone felt huge. It felt overwhelming, right? And I'm sure a lot of you are there right now. But we didn't start by remediating 22,000 PDFs or documents. We started by asking, what do we actually need? So for over 3 months, teams reviewed their content. We archived our outdated documents, we deleted what wasn't necessary, and then we turned PDFs into web pages where it was appropriate. And at the end of 3 months, we removed nearly 6,700 documents before any of our remediation even began. So the pile got smaller, the mountain of documents got smaller. Then we focused on high risk, high touch point documents, the ones that the public actually use, right? And so the turning point wasn't remediating 22,000 documents, because that's not at all what we did. It was about prioritization and it was about strategy, right? Accessibility became manageable the moment we stopped trying to fix everything and started making intentional decisions. So I just wanted to ground us with that story. But now we can look at PDFs, progress over panic. There's no crying in PDFs, right? Like I mentioned earlier, you don't have to fix everything all at once. First, conduct a document cleanup. So remove and/or delete documents you don't need. So if you have meeting minutes or documents that don't need to be there, just get rid of them. Just take them off the website. And then when in doubt, let it out. Can your PDF be a web page? So this won't be a use case for all of your PDFs, but if you have some PDFs that you can turn into a web page, do that, because the accessibility gets so much easier and better when it's on a web page. And then tackle high traffic documents first. So look at your analytics, see what people are clicking on, and then create a list of what you should remediate and tackle first. And then address required public-facing documents. And then I put on the side here, create accessible content first and from the beginning. That's kind of to do that simultaneously with all of these things, because again, it's always cheaper, faster, and less stressful when our accessibility is proactive and we have a strategy for it. Next slide, please. All right, now we have Kermit delivering us the tea. So what I would tell you if I wasn't afraid of hurting your feelings. So accessibility work isn't extra work. The work is simply incomplete if accessibility goes unchecked. And I really want to reframe this for you all, so listen up, this is important. No one publishes without proofreading. So you wouldn't just hand your boss a draft of something and say, oh, here you go, it's good to go, without reviewing it first, right? And the same goes for accessibility. So no one should publish without an accessibility check. Just as you would check for spelling or grammar, it's important to bake accessibility into this process. And I call this editing for accessibility. And it's really that low-hanging fruit and quick fixes that you can implement immediately and while you're proofreading and editing your work. And so normalize an accessibility check into your workflow. You all likely already obsess over fonts and spacing and brand standards. And accessibility is just a brand standard for humans, right? So really, that's all I have. But thank you so much. I know that this just scratches the surface on accessibility and accessibility work, but know that you're not alone and that there are many resources, especially having Finalsite as a partner for you all. So thank you. And I will kick it back to, I think, is it maybe Sue?
No, it's me. Back to me. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So just a sidebar note, we do see all of your questions that you are posting. You can also use that Q&A tab. You should see both the chat tab and the Q&A tab. We will not have time to answer every single question in there, but we will absolutely be in touch after the webinar, and we'll make sure that you have those questions answered for you, okay? Let's talk about leveraging the tools that are built into Composer. So Final Sight's, I'd like to say that we have a three-prong approach to accessibility. So the first, from a software perspective, that we are responsible for is making sure that we hand you, when we hand you that site, that it is in full compliance. Now, let's also keep in mind that these accessibility standards have evolved and changed over time. So if you got your site 5 years ago, those accessibility standards were very different than the ones that are going to be in place in April. So that's something to just keep in mind. But it is our responsibility when we hand you over the site to make sure it's compliant. With regard to keeping sites in compliance, which comes to our second prong here, which is we have some guardrails built into the system. So the first one that I want to talk about is this content accessibility checker. So this is in that content element. It's also in our post element. Now you'll notice here in red, it is the accessibility icon. One of the things that I love about this from a former special ed teacher is that when I click on it, you'll notice here that it not only flags the error, but it also gives that in the moment professional development. So for example, right, it's flagged something that doesn't have alternative text, and it's saying, here's why alternative text is important. You can also add it right in there and quick fix it. One of the things I do want to point out though, is that it takes a human to click on that link. Okay, so it doesn't automatically do it. A human does have to click on that. One of the other things that, again, it's a guardrail that we have in place is controlling that heading order. So down here we have that best practice, right? So it should maintain this very logical hierarchy, right? It should go from heading 1 to heading 2 to heading 3. We have had clients who have said to us, well, I really like heading 4 better, so I put that, after the heading 2. So that then becomes your responsibility, right? To make sure that that stays in compliance, you should be using that heading 2. And those are built right into, again, in that WYSIWYG editor, right? So the what you see is what you get. Under the styles, under the paragraph, it's right next to styles, that's where you will see that heading order. So follow that heading order, use the system, right? Use the things that we have for you in the system. Adding those descriptive links. So you'll notice here, right, where it's underlined our faculty and staff, and the title of that link is View Our Faculty and Staff Directory. So that is what a screen reader is going to be able to see there, right? So using those things that are built in and right within, when you add in that link, that you have the site page and then that title. Let's talk about alternative text. So probably one of the most important things in terms of this is what people are going to look for is adding that alternative text. There's a couple of guardrails built into the system. First, when you upload a photo, you are reminded to add that alternative text. You can also add that alternative text within the resource manager here, right? We see exactly where that is. But you can also, well, let's talk about alternative text for a moment. Best practice, about 125 characters, okay? You don't want it to be so long that it drones on, but you want it to be enough so that it visually displays what is happening in the context of that image. We now also have built in here is you can generate an AI generated alternative text through Resource Manager. One of the things with images, so I've talked to a lot of clients, and our most successful clients, they sort of make a blanket statement that every single image, even if it is decorative, should have alternative text. That way you take out the guesswork for folks that, again, maybe are not in the system all the time. This is, again, another job for them. Anytime they upload an image, it gets alternative text. Doesn't matter if it's decorative. So you're not having to have people make that distinction. Another resource, or another guardrail, I should say, that is built into our resource settings is that you can actually, and you can see this right here, you can toggle this to say only display resource images with alt text. This system will tell you, hey, you currently have 1,731 images that don't have alternative text. So know that when you click on that, it will not show any of those images that don't have alt text on there. We actually had a client who told this story back at one of our fall on-sites. And she said, I turned that on. And then she said, within minutes, I had schools calling me saying, hey, we have all, these images aren't showing up. And her response was, fix them, add the alt text, and then they will show up, which I thought was funny. Let's talk about PDFs. So I know that there are a lot of questions around PDFs. I also know that many of your sites have a lot of PDFs on them. As Bridget said, progress over perfection. So looking at those PDFs that could be transferred into HTML, that way you make them searchable and you make them accessible. I want to do a quick PDF reality check. So if someone is uploading, and you can go ahead and put this in the chat, if someone is uploading a PDF to your website, do you assume it's accessible, or do you have a review process in place? And then who owns that responsibility in your organization? I'm super curious about this, so go ahead and drop those answers in the chat. And let's spend a few minutes talking about PDFs. I know that many of you are sitting there probably saying, we have so many PDFs, and that is going to be a huge lift for me to put all of this in HTML. I have a couple of suggestions. Again, spent a lot of time working in schools. I know how short we are on resources. I truly believe in working smarter, not harder. So how can we utilize those resources that are already in our districts or already in our buildings? For those of you that are sort of one-person shops, and you're like, I don't have 5,000 hours to do this. Let's get creative. So with the guardrails built into Composer, you can get very granular with permissions. So we can have students maybe who need some credit recovery, right? So our juniors and seniors who want to be able to graduate on time, but they're short on credits. How about if we let them do a summer internship? They can earn some of those credits, teach them. It really is like a copy paste job from PDFs, right? Teach them how to do that within the system, and know that they would only have access maybe to that particular post, right? I think that we can get creative with our resources. We just have to be willing to think outside the box on it. We have some examples. Do I have it on this page? This just gives you an overview of what are those PDF sort of essentials for accessibility. I have also listed some sites for some PDF help in there. As Bridget mentioned, right, Adobe Acrobat can be overwhelming the first time that you use it. But you can use some of those built-in accessibility checkers in that software. Office also has those software built in as well. Same with Google Docs. But changing those PDFs and using our post module. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share this let me share this tab instead. So this is Eden Prairie. And what they have done is they moved all of their student and family handbooks into posts. So if I click on the high school here, you'll notice they added the search filter, and I can also filter this by topic. But really great in terms of it's very clear, it's clean, it's organized. But the most important thing is now, as a parent, if I'm like, hey, what exactly is the bullying policy? Number one, I'm not having to search through a PDF online, right? Or even if I've printed it out, I'm not having to search through that. I can do a keyword search here and I can look that up very, very quickly. So it for the end user, it's also saving a lot of time. But this is a great use of posts. You can also take this and upload it in our bulk post uploader. We have a data sheet, and we can walk you through if you need help doing that. Happy to do that. Another great example is Stillwater area public schools. So I love what they have done here. They have put their entire curriculum, again, using that post module. So if I wanted to look at something for middle school, for example, and then I wanted to be able to filter that by, age or grade, I can easily do that. But just again, sort of a great example of, how can I work smarter, not harder? Once this is done, so yes, it's going to take some time to do this the first time, but then updating it much, much faster. Another great example is Latin School of Chicago. They put all of their summer courses in posts. So I can select a grade and I can refine those options. But you'll see here, right, that they have the summary, they have the cost. So all of that is now completely online, and folks are not having to, sort through that. All right, let's go back to I think I managed that well. Those examples. I have a lot more examples, as do all of the, your contacts, your CSMs, your sales reps at Final Site. We're happy to talk to you about that. Our third prong of our focus on accessibility is our partnership with AudioEye. So AudioEye is software, and it works to help not just school districts, businesses. So the FCC actually uses AudioEye. We use it on our site. It provides end user tools, and it will help on the back end for anything that might, have a structure error, right? So we are happy to talk with you more about AudioEye. They really are a fantastic partnership for us. Each client uses AudioEye a little bit differently, but I will say high majority of our most successful clients utilize their partnership with AudioEye. I'm going to leave this QR code on the screen for a moment. If you want to learn more about AudioEye, please use that QR code. It'll take you to a page that you can get directly in touch with us. All right. I hope that everyone had a chance to do that. Again, you are going to get these slides after, so if you missed it, you can certainly click it on then. All right, Sue, I'm going to pass this to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sharon. Definitely some helpful tips there that you've shared. So another question that I'm sure most folks may be wondering about is, navigating a complaint. Certainly something that some districts may have seen in the past. Complaints for the new ADA laws that we are starting to see may differ from what we've seen in the past with the OCR complaints that may have happened years ago. Since this is a future deadline, we still don't really know what that's going to look like just yet. So our advice would simply be to always consult with your legal counsel first if you do happen to get a legal complaint. They should be your first point of contact. Let them guide you through those next steps. And then you are certainly going to align internally with your legal counsel and members of your admin team. Next, you'll want to connect with Final Site if the need is there. We are certainly your partners and happy to help however we can. We'll work together with you all to evaluate and take action on those next steps. And I think I'm just turning it back to you, Sharon, to go over our resources.
You are. Awesome. Okay. Let's take a look at this. So we also have included some resources here for you. We do have a learning module within Composer about accessibility. So if you have folks on your team and you're like, I don't even know where to start, this is so much for them to learn, this is a great starting place for them. The Office of Civil Rights also has some great training videos. So we've given you that link. They're pretty short. There's also the accessibility guy who is on YouTube. Again, places to go for just some really good information. There's also the, ADA information line. If you have been on a webinar with me before, or if you have come to any of our on-sites, you have probably seen this video. So Mark Sutton, and I'm going to just share my screen here for a hot minute. He is from the University of California, San Francisco. He is visually impaired, and he demonstrates a screen reader. I've given this link because it is probably one of the most powerful things that I have seen with regard to the why. So if you have folks on your team, it could even be your superintendent, right? Who's thinking, do we really have to do this? This is going to be a lot of time. This is going to be a lot of energy. Do we really want to invest in AudioEye? This is by far one of the most powerful things that you can show. I'm not going to show it today just because of time, but I do want to let you know that that's there. And then we also have a free guide for preparation. So as you're thinking about and preparing for, these new guidelines to come into place, this is a great resource as well. Really easy checklist to go through. Again, we really want to partner with all of our clients for this. And if we can be any help, please, please, please reach out. The last thing I'm going to just give a little shout out for, we are doing another school PR day on April 23rd. This is a free event. It is chock full of fantastic resources, speakers. You can see the agenda there. So would love to have all of you join us for that. And lastly, I just want to give a huge thank you to you for taking the time to join us today. Again, we want to partner with you, so let us know how we can help you. Happy to continue this conversation. You can do this. That's my little, I forget the word I'm looking for there, rah at the end of this, but thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate everyone spending their day with us, or part of your day with us. And we will make sure that we answer your questions and you will get the slide deck. Thanks again, everybody.